So like most of the trips that I have made, this one was also short and sharp. I landed in the East African country called Uganda on the Entebbe airport. Now Uganda is a landlocked country in East Africa whose diverse landscape encompasses the snow-capped Rwenzori Mountains and immense Lake Victoria. Its abundant wildlife includes chimpanzees as well as rare birds. Remote Bivindi Impenetrable National Park is a renowned mountain gorilla sanctuary. The Murchison Falls National Park in the northwest is known for its 43-meter tall waterfall and wildlife such as hippos. So I was driven by my guide Nasser and taken to Kampala, the capital. Kampala is Uganda's national and commercial capital, bordering Lake Victoria, Africa's largest lake. Now, when you look at Kampala, hills covered with red tile villas and trees surround an urban center of contemporary skyscrapers. In the downtown area, the Uganda Museum explores the country's tribal heritage through an extensive collection of artifacts. So I spent just 3 days in Kampala, and this was the wet season. One morning when I got up, I could see rain and the weather was very pleasant. The wet season is from September to November and March to May. This means that the dry seasons have fewer rains, but the parks remain wet during these months. The northeast, which is more subjected to drought, however, has one continuous wet season from March to November and dry season from December to February. So since my trip was short, one day was spent in the marketplace. I was able to see hundreds of public transport taxis when I went to the stand, and people were waiting, and the taxis were also waiting for the passengers. The place was pretty chaotic, and this was the bus stand in Kampala, Uganda. I could also see how the people survive, the way they eat. Chapati, which is also a common part of Indo-Pakistan, was a very common food. And I could see, of course, the place had poverty. And then after that, my guide took me to one of the slums. I was able to spend some time in this slum called Kikoni slums. It was very close to a university called Makerere, and I spent some time in the lanes. I met children, very friendly. Some of them could speak the English language and could understand as well. After that, I was taken by my guide to a local healer. So in the slums, I was able to spend some time, almost like half an hour, to observe what the local healing processes, the traditional healing processes are in the different parts of Africa. Here in Uganda, in Kampala, there was this man who was a Salongo healer. A Salongo healer is a man who has twins. Now, he has the power to treat the mentally retarded, the mentally sick people. And it was very interesting. I spent some time. He may not have been able to understand the English language, but he seemed like a confident man smoking the cigar, the traditional cigar, of course. And he had stones from the olden times the Arabs used to use. And he was a stone healer. And the time was spent well. I was at least exposed to the local healing processes that the East Africans use. So the next day I was driven to one of the biggest mosques in Kampala, and this was called the Gaddafi's, actually the National Mosque, Uganda's National Mosque. And this mosque was located at Kampala Hill in the old Kampala area of Kampala, Uganda. Now this city of Kampala has a population as of July 2019, 1,680,000 people. It's a huge population, of course. This mosque, where I was able to pray and get onto the roof, was completed in 2006. It seats a lot of people, almost like 15,000 worshippers, and can hold another 1,000 or 1,100 worshippers in the gallery, while where I was on the terrace, it could cater for another 3,500 worshippers. I was lucky. I was on the terrace with my friend and a local lady who was looking after the mosque. And from the top of the mosque, I was able to take a good view of the city of Kampala. I was able to look around, see some very few skyscrapers, lots of buildings, and the populated streets down below. Time was well spent in this mosque, almost like an hour. It is a huge mosque, and you can see it's very well made. I'm sure it was sponsored by Gaddafi, and it caters a huge population of Muslims of Kampala. So the next day I was driven. In fact, before I was driven, my guide asked me whether I wanted to go and see Jinja, a small town. So when he told me that Jinja was an important location for the meeting of Lake Victoria and the long and the largest river, the river Nile, wow, I was totally excited. So with that in mind, I thought this was the best chance for me to learn more about River Nile. We drove from Kampala through the Mabira forest, which is a rainforest area covering almost 300 square kilometers in Uganda, and is located in Bukwe district between Lugazi and Jinja. Of course, it is in Mukono district, central region, and the nearest city is Lugazi. So while driving through the Mabira forest, I was told that there are endangered monkey species in the forest in Mukono, and these monkey species were rare, and they were called the grey-cheeked mangabe monkeys, now called Lophocebus ugandii. I'm so fond of wildlife, but I did not have the time to see these endangered monkeys in the Mabira forest. We continued to drive onwards to Jinja. So after about more than an hour's drive through the forest, we were able to reach the Jinja district and the town of Jinja, which was the district's main municipal and commercial center in eastern region of Uganda. So Jinja had the second largest economy in Uganda. In the past, factories chose Jinja as their base because of the nearby electric power station of the Owen Falls Dam. So the town of Jinja has a special geographic importance. It is an important point to visit because of its geographic relevance. Knowing that you have visited the true source of River Nile gives you some serious bragging rights. Of course, one needs life vests. The water here is turbulent and the currents are incredibly strong. But I've seen the boatmen here are hardworking and very knowledgeable. This was a great source of learning which I'd never thought I would do from the start and to the end of River Nile. I've been hearing about River Nile, I've been to Egypt, but this amount of knowledge about the origin and the end of River Nile was never possible without this. Talking about the town of Jinja, it is in Jinja district in the eastern region of Uganda, as I've said, 81 kilometers by road east of Kampala. Of course, its importance is it sits along the northern shores of Lake Victoria and is the source of the White Nile. The elevation is about 1204 meters above sea level. As I've said, like Jinja is a town located in southeastern Uganda. This is where the Nile flows out of Lake Victoria, and I've already told you that it's got an elevation of 1100 meters above sea level. It was founded in 1901 as the British Administrative Centre and grew to become one of the larger towns in Uganda. So while I was there in Jinja, a very knowledgeable local guide, he told me about what we call the physiography. It is thought that approximately 30 million years ago, The early Nile, then a much shorter stream, had its sources at about 20 degrees latitude. Its main headstream may then have been present called the Adbara River to the south and link the two major parts of the Nile system, thus unifying the drainage from Lake Victoria to the Mediterranean Sea. The basin of the present-day Nile falls naturally into 7 major regions, and the Lake Plateau of East Africa to Al Jabal, the White Nile, the Blue Nile, the Adbara, the Nile north of Khartoum in Sudan and Egypt, and the Nile Delta. So I was told that obviously there were 2 Niles, the White Nile and the Blue Nile, and the White Nile was the longer one which continued down to Lake Victoria. The other thing I learned while I was in the town of Jinja was that the Lake Plateau region of East Africa produces a number of headstreams and lakes that feed the White Nile. It is generally agreed that the Nile has several sources rather than one. The furthest headstream may be regarded as the Kagera River, which rises in the highlands of Burundi near the northern tip of Lake Tanganyika and then flows into Lake Victoria. The Nile proper, however, rises from Lake Victoria, the second largest freshwater lake in the world, which has an area of more than 26,800 square miles and forms a huge but shallow lake. The Nile then begins near Jinja, Uganda, on the north shore of the lake, flowing northward over Ripon Falls, which has been submerged since the completion of the new Owen Falls Dam in 1954. This is so important. So if I were to talk about Lake Victoria, it's Africa's largest lake by area, the world's largest tropical lake, and the world's second largest freshwater lake by surface area after Lake Superior in North America. Now the lake was renamed Lake Victoria after Queen Victoria by the explorer John Hanning, but the locals give it a local name, Nyanza. It is called Nyanza in the local language. So I was able to upgrade my knowledge of the river Nile. The Blue Nile is a river originating at Lake Tana in Ethiopia, with the White Nile is one of the 2 major tributaries of the Nile. The Nile is a major north-flowing river in the northeastern Africa and is the longest river in Africa, and the disputed longest river in the world, as the Brazilian government says that Amazon is longer than the Nile. The Nile is about 4,000 miles long. So if I were to go to Egypt from where I was standing in Jinja, it would take me 90 days according to my guide, and its drainage basin covers 11 countries. Remember, 11 countries: Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, and Republic of Sudan, and Egypt. So after all this wonderful knowledge, which was not possible otherwise, I was very thankful to God that I was here in Jinja, and this knowledge about River Nile, which I have seen in Egypt, I could never have attained this. And this was a great day. Having become more knowledgeable, I returned to the city of Kampala to fly back to my country. I hope you have enjoyed this knowledgeable session on the length, the extent, the origin, and the end of River Nile. If you have, do subscribe to our channel. Thank you.